we're going to talk about a very important but very controversial topic. The American Medical Association published a report in June that said that they are no longer recommending for the requirement of the gender on a baby's birth certificate. And so the logic behind that is that they feel that the current requirement to list a baby's binary sex or gender category in publicly available documentation can lead to many challenges that disproportionately affect or impact the trans community, non-binary, and intersex people. For instance, people whose gender identity or presentation doesn't match the gender at their birth that is written on their birth certificate can experience discrimination or harassment when registering for school, getting married, or adopting a child. So we're going to talk about this, and I'm so happy to have our special guest on the couch. So this evening we have Joanna Hernandez, who is joining us. She has been in healthcare for over 14 years. Check those years, y'all. 14 years, and she has worked exclusively with the underserved population. And she is an expecting mom, so she can share with us what her perspective is as an expecting mom. And then also she is a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and she's going to school us this evening to let us know what her perspective is, what the perspective of other members of the community is on this, because not everyone is necessarily in agreement. So she's going to bring the diverse responses and opinions with regarding this important issue. So first, let's talk about why we traditionally had gender on birth certificates. What do y'all think?
To identify who we are at birth. That's why. So, I mean,
when you say who we are at birth, are you referring to
saying that we are a female or a male? That's
okay.
That was originally two things in life, but we have changed throughout this, lifetime, generations, decades. So, people want to change. People have been changing names and everything, but I guess they've given people opportunity to allow their kids to express themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't understand that part, but hey, teachers.
Well, since you don't understand it, Joanna, help us understand it.
I feel like giving people the opportunity to identify themselves without already being given a label since birth is it's a new experience, and it's something really good for the LGBTQ plus community. I feel that from birth you're given a label, and this is the way you're going to act, and this is what you're supposed to be. So I feel like that has led to a lot of teen depression, a lot of suicides, because people don't know how to find themselves. So I think it's important to give them the opportunity and not put a label on them so that they can.
But I have a question. Don't your parents give you a name at birth, whether it's a female name or a male name or same sex name?
That's an interesting point.
Isn't that giving you a something at birth too?
What do you mean?
That's an interesting point. I think what I'm gathering. Go ahead. No, I think what I'm understanding that Karen is asking is removing the gender requirement is one thing, but if I name a child Alicia, let's take a name that's stereotypically considered to be female, Alicia versus John, then doesn't that kind of does the same thing? It still results in this particular labeling?
Exactly. Absolutely, and I agree. But I think it's a little different as opposed to saying, Alicia, you can't, play with cars, as opposed to you just being able to do what you want regardless of the label. I mean, it's just, to me, it's a name, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I have guy friends who their names are Ashley, and they're men, and they act 100% men, and they're straight men. And those names, yeah, they've affected them when you tell somebody, oh, I have a boyfriend, his name is Ashley. And everybody's like, oh, okay. Oh, but it's a guy. So it is a little different. I see that point. And it's a really good point, and my fiance will totally agree with you on that. But I mean, it's a name, and I feel like it's a lot easier to change your name than to change your gender on a birth certificate.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point. What do you think, midwife?
I think that, I mean, in reading the articles and things, I think there are a couple of details there. So the push is to remove the gender or the sex from the public document, not the medical side of the document. And so I understand sex needing to be there for medical purposes, right? And I think what people are talking about is gender. Gender is a social construct. But when we're talking about sex organs, I think for the medical perspective, sure, it's important to have that for certain reasons. But if people are facing discrimination and it's barriers to their living and their life and adopting children and getting jobs or whatnot, because on the public face of the birth certificate says a gender or a sex that is not what they seem to appear, I don't understand why there would be a problem in removing that from the public side. If really the only reason we needed it was for medical reasons, then remove it from the public side so that that is not a barrier for people.
Do you guys want to enlighten us on the medical reasons why we need to know the biological gender?
Oh,
I can give a few. Well, besides, there are certain things that are going to be more not popular, but unfortunately, there are certain diagnoses, diseases, disorders that you're going to find that are going to be based on the types of, let's say, hormones your body excrete in greater numbers, and that would come down to, you know, it being female estrogen secreting versus male testosterone secreting type of thing. So those are some of the reasons why you would want to know what the sex, or I don't know if it's called gender in this case, but definitely the biological sex of the child would be, or of the person would be. This would be a good reason for it.
And that's, you know, I do know someone, and I can't share the context of it, but I do know someone who was a transsexual, and it was interesting because the person was on one particular service that was because they identified as female, but their physical structure was originally male. And one of the challenges, to your point, Dr. Job, that came up was that they ended up having cancer of the genitalia, which then there was the argument at that time, this was several years ago, not to date myself, but several years ago, where one service said, oh, but this particular person identifies as female, and that service said, however, the skin of the genitalia is of male origin, and so the treatment is very different. So it definitely, you know, we still have a lot to do in terms of working out those kinds of issues, but you're right, scientifically, there are differences in, for example, certain cancers that are based on your biological sex organs, which produce particular types of hormones that then leads to particular types of risk factors and subsequently cancers and other diseases that are more prevalent in different genders. Like women are more likely to have autoimmune diseases. Women are more likely, you know, there's a long list of things. And so definitely from the medical perspective, gender still definitely is important to know, or the original gender is important to know. But getting back to, I like the topic that Karen touched on. It kind of made me think about, then what about parenting, right? Because the parents, a lot of my patients, they do gender reveals, not necessarily the big gender reveals, but they do moderate gender reveal events. So then what happens when the birth certificate doesn't say the gender, but the parents have spent all this time celebrating a particular gender? Then what happens? Like, how do you address that issue?
I still think that's still an option, because it's still an option if you still want to put your gender, correct?
Yes, it's no longer a requirement. That's a good point.
Yeah,
it's
so
no longer required.
So it's no required, but it's still an option. So those the ones that still want to do the gender reveal, there, of course, you're gonna see put the gender on there and let it be known what gender that. For those that's not doing gender reveals and stuff, they're not gonna announce to everybody. And I'm assuming they're gonna let the kids choose whatever once they get older. But like I said, for the name thing, yes,
Mm-hmm.
people would have a name like that's for a female, but it's a male. However, I feel, I'm just speaking for myself, I
Mm-hmm.
feel that it's disrespectful to even change your whole name when your parents had gave you that name and now you don't feel
Oh, oh,
like you a Michelle, you feel like a Michael now, and like, but if your parents understand and want to understand where you're coming from and want to change, then hey, so be it. But I just feel that that's disrespect.
let me tell you, these parents they be working hard on these names. Listen.
Yes.
The names can be a source of disagreements. Let me tell you, till the very, in fact, till post delivery. I have some parents that don't even figure out the name until after the child is here. We're like, what are we calling him? But what do you do, Joanna, when you have two parents that disagree on this particular topic? Like, how do you approach that? What if one parent wants the gender listed and the other doesn't?
Well, and I think that's kind of where we're at now, where I tell my fiance I don't think that should be something that the child should choose. But at the same time, she says that we should let the baby know that she's a she. That way she is guided down that path and make that decision on her own when she's older, and she has reasoning to say, okay, I want to be a he. I want to be called Robert or whatever. So she
Mm-hmm.
feels like starting at a young age, it's just impossible. And that it shouldn't go down that route. So we're kind of split when it comes to that, in
Mm-hmm.
regards to giving the baby, you know, the option to already decide, she's just a baby. But again, I feel that once you get that label,
Mm-hmm.
that's just how you're going to be raised.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, you can't play with cars. Sarah, you can't dress with basketball shorts. That's not, appropriate. Be a lady. So they learn to come up in that way, and that's where identity is lost, and they can't seem to find themselves. Not always, but it is a challenge for them.
Mm-hmm. So, at what age would you say would be sort of the time where you would think that a child would somehow determine what they feel like their gender or non-gender is for the
I don't
non-binary?
think
Uh-huh.
I don't think there's an age, because my fiance said is 18. Do you think that's a good age to let our baby decide if she wants to, cut off her
Mm-hmm.
breasts and be a boy? And I said, I don't think there's an age. I mean, people are 21 and they're still dumb. They're still out drinking and driving. Like, there's no right mindset to say, I'm okay. I can make my own decisions. I'm
Mm-hmm.
35 going on 36 and I still make some decisions. So we don't know. There's no age limit. There's no where we start, where we end.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when you feel that you're ready.
And how do you, because that's one thing in your household, but society is still very much traditional in that sense, still very much gender based. So how do you, when she's ready to go to preschool, when she's ready to go to first grade, how do you allow her to continue in this self-discovery when there's going to be the outside pressures that will identify her gender for her? So how do you make that happen?
I think that we still have social pressures either way. We're still going to go through social pressures regardless of what issue we're going through, whether it's your gender, or whether it's that you act a different way in public and people think it's inappropriate. Those social norms are always going to be there, and that's an issue, and that's what we need to break. Where if my daughter decides that she wants to act a certain way and she wants to dress a certain way and she wants me to call her Bob, then okay, that's fine. Because we're still going to have those social norms, and I think that that's a big issue, and that's definitely an issue, and that's something that we need to work on, that we're stuck in those social norms.
And what do you say to the, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Trista.
My voice likes to come in and out right now.
Yeah,
So
okay. You can give us the
more
sexy baritone voice.
Is it more about the social? Is it more about the social and the societal norms, or is it really about what the piece of paper says? Because from what I'm hearing from you, it sounds a lot more of what the environment pushes on the child, and we know that does happen, but we also know that, for me, one, I'm very much against pink. I hate it, and everybody would always assume pink is for girls. You try to put me in pink, I will punch you really hard. However, I'm still the most effeminate of women when I want to be. And that's just it. I feel like we need to let children, people, whatever, yes, express themselves and give them the options of, okay, if you want to wear basketball shorts, okay, maybe it's not appropriate to wear a formal dinner, but if you want to wear basketball shorts around the house, around the yard, and, you know, go out with your friends, whatever, then that's fine. So for me, it's more along the lines of, that's not a limitation of the gender that they're identified by, but to what societal norms we are asking them to adhere to. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, where do you
I
think
see
the
what you're
pushback is
saying.
coming from? Yeah, go ahead, Joanna.
I see what you're saying. I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, well, why do you think there's such pushback? If this is really just public record, and we're talking about, like, where does your gender matter in terms of public records? They look at it for security reasons, right? Security reasons.
But does it matter so much? Because I'm gonna be honest, I didn't see my birth certificate until I was like a teenager. My birth certificate didn't dictate anything about who I was or how I felt. I mean, really,
but you used it. They had
later.
And not just did your birth certificate not dictate who you are now, but from you being, you know, a baby, you're a girl. Your mom put dresses on you. You did the whole feminine, I'm a girl thing. So, and that also plays into it.
So you guys, you know, the birth certificate is actually used for a number of very important documents. You know, we use it for our passport, we use it for a lot of ID documents. So even though we don't use the actual birth certificate all the time, it is the foundation of which other very official documents are based. And so what about like security concerns? Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think, and like, I would just like to preface this by saying I totally support supporting any group or population of people that needs things to be able to be happy and that don't endanger others, especially something like this, like the LGBTQ community. Identity is very important. It's about being heard, being seen, and trying to find your place in the world. So I really support that. But I also wonder if sometimes we romanticize the idea of not influencing our children at all, because everything we do is going to influence them. Everything that the outside world does influences them. And I've always thought that my job as a parent has been to try to guide my child. So as a woman, as a cisgendered woman that I identify, I am so proud of being a cisgendered woman. I love feminine energy. So my daughter, I'm raising her to be proud to be a woman and that energy, and to embody that in whatever way that is for her. Whether she wants to dress a certain way, act a certain way, it doesn't matter. Her sex does not limit nor dictate that yet for her. She doesn't know it to be that way. My son either. As a matter of fact, my son was wearing a dress the other day and my dad almost fell out. He's like, please put some pants on him. I was like, I need you to breathe. And he's 3 years old and he wants to be like his sister, you know, and whatever that means is whatever that means. And so I think the unknown is really scary to us, and people push back because it's scary. I've had moments where I've been intolerant, where I've said things that perhaps I shouldn't have said, because we don't understand, and it's scary and it makes you feel threatened for some reason. And I'm not exactly sure why. So lately I've been pushing back a lot as to like, well, why not? What is the big deal? Like, why not? Why not leave the gender or the sex off of the birth certificate if it is negatively impacting a group of people? Like, why not? Why not call somebody Bob or they who wants to be called that? What is the actual problem? Why is it such an affront to us?
On that note, I have something to say about that. You said, why not? That is true. Why not? But however, like you said, once your child reach a certain age to go to school, they are going to identify that child as a male or female and everything. I have something personally in my life that I just recently, my little sister, I'm 12 years older than my little sister, and she went off to college and came back. And all through her life, I have dressed her up like a little girl as she was. But however, she didn't, when I moved out, because I'm so older than her, I moved out. She didn't want to dress in dresses with skirts and everything. She dressed in pants or whatever was comfortable, which that was totally fine. Now she revealed to me that she lets everybody else that she meets that her name is Sage. Her name is not Michelle. Her name is Sage. So her family and stuff, she said she identified herself as a they, them. And I'm okay with that. I told her, I still love you. You my sister, still love you. Whatever you want to do. Because she said all her life, she always was told, were you a girl or you a boy? So she didn't have that identity as she was getting in that former years of development of knowing what she want to be or what is she. So therefore, people label her sometimes as a girl, sometimes as a boy. But she, at the age she is now, I can honestly say she embraced both sides, whether she want to look like a girl or dress up like a boy, whatever, she embraced both sides. So I'm totally fine with whatever, but for those that's tradition and that's going to continue to be putting their gender on there, is, hey, everybody's going to do what they're going to do.
I mean, I think we're like a labeling society. Growing up, everybody asked me, are you more Black or are you more Mexican? And I was like, I don't even know how to answer that. Like, my mom is Mexican and my dad is Black. I'm half and half, right?
Yeah.
Well, which one do you feel more of? Neither. So I think no matter what, we have a tendency in the way society is now. I'm not saying we can't change and evolve, but the way we are now, we have a tendency. And even in the LGBTQ movement, they're moving away from the traditional labels, but they're now our new labels. So we have a tendency to want to label and file things away into certain places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really know how to wrap that up in a
yeah
pretty bow.
I mean, I just what about on the international level, right? Because we're now a very much global society, and there are definitely countries where this is not going to be acceptable for them, because of the foundation. Certain countries are religiously founded, have certain belief systems. And so when you start talking about changing international documents, such as a passport, or you move to another country, Americans are very transit, so we like to live in Europe, we like to live in Africa, we like to go to Asia. But these countries are not necessarily following suit, or these continents of countries are not necessarily following suit. And so how do you then take an evolving culture that is all inclusive and then really be able to stand on that international level? Like, what does that look like? Did I stump y'all?
I don't know. I don't know.
I feel like that's a really good point, but I don't have that. That's a really, really good point. And it just kind of brings me back to a point that I had touched a while back with one of my cousins. They felt that women that wear the hijabs, should they take them off during their picture ID in California, or should we respect their religion and where they come from and have them keep the hijab? And how does that affect us? You can't see the face. Like, it's a very similar question, because it's something very, I think that's really touchy. That's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have much of an answer and thought process for that.
It's hard. I mean, I'm asking you to solve the world problems, which takes committees decades to do. But it's, that's where if I were to sought to be the voice of the other side of the aisle, I would probably say that's, some people may say this is a security issue. We are, a lot of our, we will talk about the biases of facial recognition, but let's start there. So a lot of facial recognition, artificial intelligence is based on certain structures that then categorizes people into, again, categories, as Olivia was talking about. And so is this a national security issue if our technology and the biases behind technology has not caught up with society? Then how do we monitor who is who? How do we monitor, who is a danger to our society and who is considered? Go ahead.
No, because people have plastic surgery and change everything about them all the time. So that doesn't actually have to do Nah, girl, nah. I don't think so. I don't think so.
People have plastic surgery and do what? Say that one more
And
time.
people change the way they look all the time. That doesn't necessarily have to go with your gender or your sex. I mean, plastic surgery, makeup, implants, I mean, all kinds of things. So as far as facial recognition and national security, I don't think that is that the LGBTQ community being recognized for who they are or giving room for transgender and different genders. I don't think that. No, I don't. That
In terms,
it becomes. I don't think it becomes more risky. Not more than anybody else doing anything else to themselves.
And it doesn't mean that the other
Right.
people who are doing plastic surgery aren't a risk.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't think they're more at risk than anybody
Yeah.
else who would already, I mean, alter themselves.
Right.
Mhm.
Anybody can be a
I-
danger to society. It can be anyone, regardless of your gender. And I don't think that should be one of the reasons for
Mhm.
this whole entire topic.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. What were you gonna say,
One of
Dr.
the-
Joe?
one of the things and the ways that I feel like, it kind of comes just down to being able to identify. And yes, it becomes a bit of a label because you can have two people born on the same year and the same date, both named Ashley Smith. One can be male, one can be female. And so having had the experience in my high school where, with my unusual name as it is, there was somebody in my same class with the same, we were about a month apart, same year. The only difference in our names was a T. I was Trissa Campbell, she was Tharissa Campbell. And we got mixed up every single time I went to the health clinic. I literally would have to tell them Trissa, not Thrissa. Look at the chart, Trissa, not Thrissa. Like every single time. And I think about these types of things when you have like people that have these names, because as you were talking about names earlier, we have to remember that names also change, because there was a part of a point in time, Allison was the name of a man. It's now more popular with women, but Ashley, Stacy, most of these names are traditionally names that were given to men. Women have taken them over or been given them to girls, whatever, however you want to describe it. But that's just one of those things. So now if we don't have any of that information, it becomes less of an ability to pinpoint who it is that we're looking for. And that's just one of the things that I can think about.
Yeah, yeah. And Olivia actually said something to touch on what Dr. Job just said also. All we seem to do is really recreate new labels, right? So is this really a push towards delabeling, or is this a push towards just creating a new set of labels? Because then are we what was I gonna say? Are we then in terms of I lost my train of thought. Something I was just about to say. But yeah, I'll start there. So is this eventually going to become a requirement to have new labels? Is this a requirement to have new labels, or are we truly just getting rid of all labels and that's the direction society is heading in?
It looks like they creating new labels, but luckily I won't be here that long to see all that stuff. So yeah.
I think I would love to see it go to no labels. I just don't know if we have the capacity to do that with the way we are as people right now. I mean, because that's what it has always felt like. It has always felt like you're trying to get away from the limitations that labels give you. So we create new labels that then put you in new boxes. And so when the LGBTQ plus movement started really gaining traction, I would say maybe in the last 5 to 10 years, where it's becoming really to the forefront with social media and everything. That was always where I was confused to start with. I was like, I don't understand. If we're trying to get rid of labels, then why are we creating more labels that have more rules? Now I'm even more confused. So I think the goal is to get away from labels. However, maybe in the process of doing that, we're creating more so that it's more inclusive, so that you understand that there are more colors to the rainbow.
What do you think, Joanna?
I kind of agree on this one. It's just creating new labels. I don't think labels are ever fully going to go away, because we're going to replace one label with another one. So it's just recreating new labels.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Black experience in America, right, we're not going to start with the original term we were called, but we've been called people of color, colored people, Black people, African Americans, African diaspora. Am I missing some? BIPOC,
Black Americans,
Black Americans,
Negroes.
Yeah, Negroes. I forgot about that one. I was trying to stay away from the N ones, but yeah. So we have been labeled, and to this day we still don't even agree as to what we want to be called. And I guess it speaks to the fact that we're such a diverse community that even when we're in the minorities of the diverse community, there's still a diversity amongst that. And lots of disagreement, and the LGBTQ plus community is the same. It's still a diverse community. It's a minority community that is also diverse, with diverse opinions and diverse desires in terms of how they would like to be represented. And so I don't look necessarily to see a unanimous agreement on any of the topics when it comes to just how a community wants to be represented. But I do hope that we can remove the labels, because the labels have been used really as a form, a tool of suppression. That's really what we're talking about, right? So that we can identify the group that's going to be suppressed. And had labels not been used in such a, have been weaponized in such a way, then perhaps it would hit a little bit different, right?
Oh, yes. Preach on that, yes.
Right?
Yes,
but it doesn't,
exactly right.
because it's been weaponized.
Yes.
And so now we're trying to figure out ways how to be identified, but then not be weaponized. So
to not be limited by what you identify as.
Right. Exactly. So I just thank you guys for this discussion. You guys have made me think a lot more about a lot of things. We're gonna work on the security. We're gonna work on the security issue together. Joanna and I are gonna come up with a policy, worldwide policy, in which all people can be accepted. Yeah. And
it should be released by next week.
She's a high achiever, just like the rest of us. Okay. So Joanna, we thank you so much for being on the virtual couch with us and explaining and representing the community, which is a task in of itself to ask you to represent an entire group of people. But we thank you for lending the voice. If people wanted to reach you on a social level, how would they reach you? What's your handle if you're on any of the social media platforms?
I would probably, I don't do really much social media, but I do, the only one I have is Instagram.
Okay.
Which I also don't know my name anyway.
She fits right into the group because half the team members don't ever remember their handles. Okay. But Joda, we thank you for being on the couch with us, and we're going to head right to our midwife. Where can they find you, midwife?
On Instagram at This American Midwife.
Awesome. And come on, What a Touch. Where can they find you?
Like you said, What a Touch on IG.
And talking about never remembering her handle, but she's been doing it pretty well recently. Dr. Joe, where can they find you?
She on mute.
Muted. And she's still muted.
PressaJoe.dpt on Instagram.
We appreciate you, Dr. Joe. We appreciate you. And I am
Dr. Stalling.
I know, right? And I am Dr. P. I'm the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club. You can find us on Instagram at our new home now at healthybump.club. We hope to see you there. Check out our other videos on YouTube. If you love this video, you're going to love a whole lot of other videos. So don't go anywhere. Check out the next video that's pulling up right now. See you guys later. See you guys next episode. Bye.